Welcome to Trucking Tributes. I'm your host for Trucking Tributes, Susan Patten. And today on Trucking Tributes, I have the privilege of speaking with Anne-Marie Lynn. Now, Anne-Marie is the Director of Business Development and Marketing for U.S. Legal Services and a friend of Wreaths Across America and Elizabeth Barna. And we're going to unpack all of that today on Trucking Tributes on Radio Nemo. Anne-Marie, thank you so much for taking the time out today. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Susan. It's nice to be with you today and talk about Wreaths Across America and professional drivers, some of my favorite topics.
I know, right? Mine too. So we're going to have a great conversation today on Trucking Tributes. But what I'd like to first do is to introduce you, Anne-Marie, in terms of our listening audience. How is it that you actually found yourself involved with the trucking industry to begin with?
Well, I tell people you only are born into it or you stumble into the trucking industry. Not that many people set out to go into the trucking industry. So I happened to stumble into it. Our business ended up having a product that is customized for commercial drivers. And somebody here at U.S. Legal Services needed to understand what that meant and needed to become very familiar with the transportation industry. And so that's somebody I decided that needed to be me. So I joined some state associations, the Florida Trucking Association, since that's our home state, the Georgia Motor Trucking Association. And from there, I met Jamie Hammonds, who was at GMTA, and then he went on to work at the American Trucking Associations. And he's like, if you want to learn trucking, you need to go to the American Trucking Associations. And so I joined the American Trucking Associations. And the rest was history 18 years ago. And I never in a million years thought I would know as much as I do about trucking. And I'm so glad I do. I love the trucking industry. I never want to leave it. I love professional drivers. I am just addicted to it.
It's such a cool parallel, Anne-Marie, because everybody's saying that about the trucking industry. And once you get involved, you never really want to walk away. And the same thing is said about Wreaths Across America and involvement with our organization. Once you get involved, you're kind of hooked and you want to keep on participating. So tell me a little bit about U.S. Legal Services. Who are you? How do you function? And what services is it that you have that benefit the trucking industry?
Well, U.S. Legal Services was founded by my father 51 years ago, who is an attorney, non-practicing now and retired. We started off as a company that that provides legal services, personal legal services for the average working American family or consumer. And a trucking company heard about what we do and said, hey, we are rolling moving targets down the highways and law enforcement is killing us. And our drivers, they just see big pockets and they want our money. And so when a driver gets pulled over, there's going to be something wrong, whether they had the cleanest pre-trip inspection and something rattles loose on the way on their route. And it's just the way of the industry. So we want to make sure that drivers have good access to attorneys to represent them when that happens. And it's not a matter of if anymore, it's a matter of when, because bad things happen to good drivers. And we want them to have access to good quality attorneys in due process of the Constitution.
Now, you mentioned that you've been that family business, and kudos for your dad for getting everything started. It sounds like you had run this business long term, but you've also transitioned as of late. So, can you explain that?
Yeah, in April, we were purchased by another individual who shares the same passion as my dad and our family for offering quality professionals for an affordable price to legal services to access the legal system and break down those barriers of affordability. And who are the good guys? Who are the good attorneys that are going to provide quality services who are going to pick up the phone when you call, who are going to be available when you need them. And, we credential those attorneys on an annual basis and we pay their bill at the end of the service period and for a low monthly fee. And the difference is we are an insurance product. We are not a motor club. We are not, we're regulated in a more stringent way than our competitors, and that means that we are held to a higher standard. And that means that we're going to be around much longer. And it's harder to do it the way we do it, but that's okay. That's okay. That means that we're doing a really good job for our members.
It's worth doing it.
It is.
And so, Anne-Marie, is there a typical circumstance or case that crops up for drivers, or does it run the full gamut of representation?
It's a great question. It runs a full gamut. And in the past, it used to be that people would say, we don't want our drivers to have a get out of jail free card. And, they shouldn't be speeding. They shouldn't be, driving. They shouldn't be changing lanes inappropriately. And I agree with all of that. Um, there's governors on engines now, and, they shouldn't be going above speed limits. But the truth of the matter is, sometimes a driver needs to speed up to go around a car that's in the right-hand lane going too slow, or they're driving dangerously and they need to go around them for whatever reason. Maybe a passenger vehicle, they need to go into the left lane to pass the passenger vehicle for some reason or another. They need to make that a decision that a professional driver makes on a daily basis in a split second. And law enforcement sees a situation in a split second because they only get, a couple of seconds of visibility into that moment in time. And they make a decision to pull that driver over and cite them for something, whether it's, our top five, couple of our top five is improper lane change and speeding. And so it might be 5 over, it might be 7 over. It could be an improper lane change. It could be, and then once they get pulled over, then they get cited for improper tread depth. It could be brake lines. It could be windshield wipers. It could be any number of things on one citation. And then they get a roadside inspection. All of those things are on the roadside inspection. All those things carry points, and that hits the CSA score. And then that carries significant fines. And it's just a terrible day for that driver and that motor carrier. And it's a huge snowball effect. And the motor carrier then, that impacts their risk management insurance products rates. And if it's an owner operator, gosh, they are small business owners. And we are at risk for losing all of those small business owners right now in Congress. And we are fighting so hard for all of them to maintain that status, and we don't want to lose them. And so these small pieces of the puzzle go into them maintaining their small business. If one, I don't mean to be dramatic here, but one thing like this that impacts their insurance rates can put them out of business because the margins are so small on running a trucking company. If they have a single truck, or if they have 2 trucks or 3 trucks, even fleets that are 1,000 trucks have such small margins. If their insurance premiums go up, it can put them into the red. So we want to do our part to protect that where we can.
Yeah, and
So
it's not dramatic, it's reality. I mean, let's face it, it's absolute reality in the industry today. And we have so many independent operators, owner operators out there as well. I'm speaking with Anne-Marie Lynn. She's the Director of Business Development and Marketing for U.S. Legal Services. Now, Anne-Marie, you mentioned your home base is out of Florida, is that correct?
Yes, we're in Jacksonville, Florida.
But how do you
Florida's first coast.
folks find you in the event that they are in need of your services? Do they become members and then have you in their back pocket, so to speak, if something comes up, or how is it that they find you and utilize your services?
So ideally, they would want to be a member prior to receiving that citation. So they can go to uslegalservices.net and click on enroll. They can enroll without being part of a group. It's a little bit more expensive than if they became a member outside, if they drive for a company. We do work with many, many groups across the country and motor carriers across the country. And so they might want to check with their employer to see if we work with them. And if we don't work with them, they might want to ask their employer, who do we work with? And if it's not us, if they don't have a legal plan, they can say, hey, check out U.S. Legal Services. They can feel free to contact me at Lynn, Lynn, at uslegalservices.net. I'm always available. Even when I'm on vacation, I'm available. I can't give it up and leave people hanging. So,
Spoken like a
um,
true workaholic, Anne-Marie.
well, you know how it is. It takes one to know one, Susan.
Well, indeed. It's like, is my phone ever off? Really, really? No. I'm getting better at it though, the older I get. So it's true. So, you mentioned earlier on in the interview, Anne-Marie, that if you were going to provide these services for the trucking industry, then you darn well better know the trucking industry and understand what it is that they need and how they operate. It must have been a little overwhelming at first when you first started becoming members of all these trucking associations. What was that experience like for you?
Well, I had some really good guides. And I try to pay that forward to other people now. So I had great people at the ATA and at FTA, and then other members were very supportive of helping me figure out my roadmap. So I would advise people to find their people to help navigate them. So if there's anybody out there who's trying to figure out their way, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help whatever way I can. So even if they're not in Florida or the Southeast, I now have the very distinct privilege of knowing a lot of people in the industry, and I'm happy to connect them with whoever. But yes, it was very overwhelming. But I was fortunate to have people who were very willing to show me the ropes. But I got involved, and that's the first step. You can't, and I'm an introvert. I had to learn to be extroverted, and that was scary. But I had to put myself out there a little bit by little bit and get involved. So I got involved with a committee, like a very small committee where you don't have to do a lot. You just have to show up every now and then. And that was with communications and image. And you just learn a lot. You learn about what's going on in the trucking industry and how we're trying to make the professional driver more professional and visible by the public in a professional capacity. And then I got involved with independent contractor policy committee so that I could understand what our drivers' pain points were. And then I just got involved with safety policy because, we're a very safety centric company. We want to prevent safety events. And so I needed to understand what that meant. And so, selfishly, I got involved with policy committees that helped me understand what our company was about and what we were trying to do. So, yeah, I was able to learn a lot, and I asked a lot of questions, probably to an annoyance of a lot of people, but that's the only way to learn.
That's absolutely the way to learn. And I've got to say that I've probably learned the most that I've ever known about the trucking industry simply by talking with everyone on Trucking Tributes and being able to have the privilege of talking with professional drivers throughout the country, carrier companies and their representatives and industry representatives. And I've learned so much that I think I've been made an honorary professional driver, which is a good thing it's honorary because you wouldn't want to see me behind the wheel. But that's another whole story. But I have thoroughly enjoyed the trucking championships and learning everything that I can. And you speak truth when you say that the carrier companies and the drivers are focused on safety. They truly are. And we at Wreaths Across America know that the members of our honor fleet are all safety driven, very much so. And it's very, very important to them that that's their reputation. And the honor fleet members for Wreaths Across America are extraordinary men and women. And we really, really appreciate their involvement in the mission mission because, Anne-Marie, I know that you got started a while back with Wreaths Across America, but this year in 2025, we are going to be at 5,000 participating locations in addition to Arlington National Cemetery throughout the country. And that's simply because patriotic Americans are stepping up to volunteer to say, hey, I'll start a location. And it doesn't need to be a national cemetery like Arlington. It can be a community cemetery. It can be a memorial site. Really, anywhere where U.S. military veterans are laid to rest can become a participating location. It just takes volunteers to step up. And as you mentioned, you got your first taste of Wreaths Across America and the mission to remember, honor, and teach at Arlington National Cemetery. Can you describe that whole circumstance?
So earlier on in our participation with the state associations and the American Trucking Associations, and I'll throw in the Truckload Carriers Associations too, because TCA is a big supporter of Wreaths Across America. We supported the truck driving championships on the state level, NTDC on the national level, and also sponsored the road team, the America's Road Team, for a number of years. And so I always had my kids out because they were always over Father's Day, Mother's Day, at the state level trucking association, truck driving championships. And as they were starting to learn how to drive, I wanted them to learn how to drive and respect large trucks. And so I had them working alongside law enforcement and our professional drivers, teaching them about blind spots and respecting, those large trucks. So that's one piece. And then we ended up going to Arlington in 2015 since they knew about the America's Road Team and they were the convoy coming into Arlington. And obviously we love going to DC, and my kids have done internships and worked on the Hill and so on and so forth. And Christmas time is such a lovely time to be in DC. We went up in 2015 and were able to lay wreaths on the headstones there. And what a tremendous experience, humbling experience that was, to be able to take wreaths out of the trailers, and they still had ice on them, and be able to lay them at the headstones of strangers. And, maybe they didn't have families that were coming to see them and pay tribute to them, but that was our contribution to those fallen soldiers during that time and that year. It was just a tremendous honor to be able to spend that time. And my kids remember that 10 years later. My oldest has gone and done that himself after he's lived in DC with his now fiance and friends. So that tradition has gone on, without parental involvement. And, he's done that on his own. I tried to get it together for our office to go and do it here locally. My grandfather is buried at our local national cemetery. We weren't able to get it together. I had another work event conflict with the weekend. But since we work with, our office staff here in Jacksonville doesn't get to interact with professional drivers in that capacity like I do. And so I would love for them to be able to experience that same thing. We have a lot, because Jacksonville has 2 Navy bases here. We have a lot of naval veterans on staff and spouses. So, it's a very family friendly environment for being able to go and do that. And so they have the same strings attached. So
I love the fact that you have taught your generation, your young people, your family members about the mission to remember, honor, and teach. And that's what's so important, is to teach that next generation the value of freedom. And I love, Anne-Marie, that you touched on the fact that, some of these folks at the headstones, they haven't had family able to visit or may not have family any longer. And of course, as you know, our mission, part of that, when you place that wreath on the headstone, is to say their name aloud, because at Wreaths Across America, we always say that you die twice, person dies twice, once when your heart stops the first time, and the second time when your name is spoken for the last time out loud. And we ask all of our volunteers who are placing these veterans wreaths, and of course, we should make the point that we're not decorating graves at Christmas, but Christmas time is truly one of those times in the year where it is so difficult for our family members who are missing loved ones to remember and honor their fallen family members at that time. And when we place those veterans wreaths on the stones of the fallen, we say their name out loud, and we're teaching younger generations to do that. And what a cool thing to know that your son was impacted enough to know that now, as an adult, he is beginning that tradition for himself and his fiance and for his future family. Now, you mentioned your grandfather. So do you have military service in your background in your family?
I do. My grandfather served as a cook in World War II. I don't know a ton about that. He also drove a tanker for local deliveries in Ohio before he retired. Um, so that's an interesting combination. And then my father was in the Army just for a short time. He was in the reserves, I believe, and was trained to drive tanks leading up to the Cuban Missile Crisis. But I
Wow.
don't know that he did anything active duty. But I think it still
He
counts.
took the pledge and he put the uniform on and he agreed to serve. And we all know that so few, such a small percentage of our population agrees to take that pledge, agrees to serve. It's great to now know that our recruitment efforts within our military are up again and people are understanding that sense of patriotism and pride in saying, I will take the pledge, I will serve our country and wear the uniform of the armed services. And that's really nice to know as an American citizen that people are stepping up again. Now, you mentioned Jacksonville. Jacksonville certainly is a hotbed, quite a market for Wreaths Across America. We have many participating companies and we have many participating cemeteries, and our volunteers, our boots on the ground for Wreaths Across America. Absolutely great opportunities for you to get engaged. Now, you mentioned Elizabeth Barna, and I chuckled when you said if you know Elizabeth Barna for any length of time, which we do here on Trucking Tributes, that Elizabeth has a way of pulling you into her passion projects. And absolutely no doubt we are blessed to say that Elizabeth Barna's passion project is, in fact, Wreaths Across America, and we're grateful for that. So, what sort of plans do you have going into 2025 for U.S. Legal Services, Anne-Marie, and or yourself for getting more involved?
Here we tried to do some fundraising for Wreaths Across America. It was a very last minute attempt and so was therefore not as successful as I would have liked. So we will be planning ahead this year and doing some fundraising for Wreaths Across America through our social channels and whatever else we were instructed to do. So we're working on an organized plan well in advance of the Christmas season, or I should say the holiday season, to do fundraising for this wonderful cause. Anything that brings awareness to our American heroes, both professional driving American heroes and to our veterans who have risked their lives for our country and our freedoms that go, I think, undervalued every single day.
Amen to that.
And
And I say that they're American heroes. You're absolutely right because many of our professional drivers, members of our honor fleet at Wreaths Across America, are also military veterans, and they have done their duty and they have done their time in service. And they also say it's so important for them to actually give back to their brothers and sisters in arms to show them their gratitude for the service that they have given. And many of our professional drivers, Anne-Marie, tell us that this load of veterans wreaths is the most important cargo of their career. And that really is a statement that elicits goosebumps, at least for me, to hear of
you
that.
mentioned goosebumps because there's been three times now during this interview that you have made me have goosebumps
Oh,
uh, on this during this time. And I shaved yesterday, and now my leg hair has grown back. So I will Um, Hold you accountable for that.
I'm all right with that. I've got broad shoulders. And, on behalf of our trucking industry, I'm good with knowing that. And as they should. I'm speaking with Anne-Marie Lynn. She is the Director of Business Development and Marketing for U.S. Legal Services, a friend of Wreaths Across America, certainly a friend of the trucking industry, and getting involved and even more involved now as we are hearing. And it's never too soon to get involved. If you are a professional driver or a carrier company, we need trucks. The secret was spread a long time ago, and we are shouting it to the rooftops with our growth. And we have organic growth every single year as more and more patriotic citizens stand up to remember, honor, and teach. And we need trucks. Courtney George, our Director of Transportation, tells us on Trucking Tributes that we already know where some of our open lanes are going to be this year. A lot of our professional drivers are making multiple stops because we've got so many volunteers that are getting engaged. Last year it was 3.1 million wreaths. Courtney tells us, Anne-Marie, that we're going to pick up probably 100 to 200,000 additional veterans wreaths in 2025. So we can't do it without folks like you at U.S. Legal Services and folks in our trucking industry. What are we not touching on, Anne-Marie, that you feel is important about this, your company or your involvement in the trucking industry or Wreaths Across America?
Two things, Susan. One is, what is your goal for Wreaths Across America? If every veteran were to have a wreath, how much would it take?
I don't know the exact number, and I probably should, but that is absolutely a goal of our founder, Morrill Worcester, to one day have every U.S. military personnel who is laid to rest in this country receive a veteran's wreath in December. And, one of our most compelling stories that we have comes from our chairman of the board, and hold on to those goosebumps, Anne-Marie, when he was in Arlington years ago when we just started, and Arlington was our first cemetery, if you will, and we didn't have enough wreath sponsorships to cover the entire cemetery. And a gentleman came up to our chairman of the board, Wayne Hansen, himself a Vietnam veteran, and said, "Well, what are all these wreaths?" And Wayne proudly described what the mission of Wreaths Across America was. And the man looked up at him with tears in his eyes and he said, "Well, what about my son?" And the wreaths had just stopped. And so, our goal, everyone at Wreaths Across America, anyone that you speak with that is involved with this organization, it is the goal of each and every one of us to make sure that every U.S. service member who is laid to rest receives a veteran's wreath in December. And that takes Americans to step up to sponsor those wreaths and to get them to the locations that are participating.
Well, you just upped the ante and not only chill bumps, but tears now. So that's unacceptable.
It's a mission that people feel good about. It's a mission that is servicing all walks of life. There's no politics, there's no religion, there's none of that involved in what we do at Wreaths Across America. It's simply a way for American citizens to say, "Thank you. We remember you. We honor those who are currently serving and their families, and we teach the next generation the value of freedom." So, Anne-Marie at U.S. Legal Services, thank you so much today for joining Trucking Tributes, and thank you for getting involved and helping us spread the mission. We appreciate you.
You've given me newfound motivation. So thank you for that. And I've really enjoyed our time together. So I'm very grateful.
Absolutely my honor. Do stay safe and take care, and we'll talk soon, I'm sure.